Okay, in this video tutorial we're going to be using Photoshop Elements version 2019. I happen to be working on a Windows 10 computer today. What we're going to do is we're going to do a collage of 3 photos on a white background. The thing that'll be a little bit interesting is that the edges of the photos will be feathered or blurry, if you will. So that's kind of a nice look sometimes, and let's see how you do that. Let me show you what I've got active down here in the photo bin along the bottom. I've got 1, I'm clicking now on 2, clicking over here, 3 scenic photos that I'm going to use. I also have a file that I created which is a plain white background. Okay, so let's go to the first image. The one in the thing, I single clicked on it and it made it the active image. Okay, now the trick to doing this is to use a very specific sequence and very specific tools. So take note of these individual steps. If you forget one of these steps, you can get curious results and then be quite frustrated. So first of all, I did, before starting this video tutorial, I did make a duplicate of this file and I put away the original. Okay, and that's as simple as coming up here to say File, Duplicate. It'll prompt you for a name. I gave it it'll prompt you, it'll add the word copy to whatever it is, and when you say OK, it'll make a duplicate copy. I don't need to do that because I've already done that in the interest of time. So all 3 of these photographs are already copies that I can work on without endangering the original images. All right. Now I'm going to come over to the Layers panel. Notice I'm in Elements and I'm in the expert mode of the editor, and I do have the Layers panel selected by clicking down here in the lower right. Okay. Now in order to make this work, you need to come up to the background layer and you need to unlock the layer. And every photo that opens by definition is locked, and you can tell because there's a tiny padlock next to it. It says indicates the layer is partially blocked. I realize part of that is off the screen of the recording right now. But you can unlock it 2 ways. Well, there might be more, but the easiest 2 ways. You could click and drag the padlock to the trash can. And you'll notice that everything looks the same except the layer is no longer labeled background. It's layered layer 0. All right. So now let's go on about making these feathered edges. The trick to this is to use a tool in the upper left here. Is called the Marquee tool. And it's right to the immediate right of the Move tool. So the Marquee tool is selected. When I click on it, in the bottom edge, the panel turns into the Tool Option panel, where we can do settings that have to do with the specific tool. You'll notice that there are 2 of them, rectangular and elliptical. We're going to use the rectangular. If for some reason you want a square marquee, you would use the rectangular and hold the Shift key while you make the selection. If you wanted a circular, you would use the elliptical and hold the Shift key as you made the selection. So let's go ahead and accept I think a rectangular shape is just fine for this. But before we actually do it, we need to pay attention to this entry here. It says feather, and there's a value here. And you move this slider back and forth. As you move it to the right, these numbers get higher. So we could make the feather really large, or we could make it really small. I sometimes like to just highlight that and put in a specific number so that I remember it for the future, especially if I'm moving image to image and all the images have the same pixel count. So let's get on with it, because we have the tools options set properly. You'll notice the cursor turns from my normal yellow arrowhead. When I move into the image, it becomes the marquee cursor, which is a crosshair. So I'm going to come up here near the corner. I'm going to click drag, 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 and now I'm going to release. This is all the left mouse button, click drag. 1, 2, 3, release. Boom. We now have a selection made. We know that because we have these dotted lines. We call these the marching ants, and you'll notice that the corners are rounded. That happens when we add a feather value to the image. Okay, so if this feather was set to 0, this would be a hard 90-degree corner, but it's not. There's some feather here, and therefore this corner is rounded. Now, what I want to do is I want to eliminate everything outside of the selection. Okay, I want all of that stuff to go away, and I want it to go away gradually. In fact, it's going to allow the transparency to show through. That way, when I put it on another background, the other background will show through. Now, the way to do that is to invert the selection, meaning you tell Photoshop, hey, I don't want what's inside the marching ants, I want what's between the marching ants and the outer edge. And the way we do that is we come up to the top and we say, select inverse. And now you'll see marching ants around the entire photograph and the selection we pulled with the marquee tool. And when I hit the delete key on my keyboard, watch what happens. 1, 2, 3, delete. We have a nice feathered edge, a nice fuzzy transition between the photo and the transparency. And that's exactly what we want. I'm going to click away to get rid of those marching ants. Another way to get rid of the marching ants would be to deselect them using a keyboard shortcut, Control D like deselect. Or you could have come up here to the select menu and done deselect. You'll notice it's grayed out right now because there's no selection made. There are no marching ants going on right now. So we're just going to leave that be for a second. Let's go back to our photo bin. We have to click down here to open that up. And let's go to the next image. Let's go to this next one. It's called British Columbia Copy. Again, you'll notice I'm looking over here. It's already made it a layer 0. It already knew that the first image, when I opened it, it was the background layer locked, and I unlocked it. So it kindly anticipated that for me. So I don't have to unlock this layer. It's already unlocked. There's no padlock, and it's called layer 0. So let's get to work. Marquee tool, check. Let me click on the marquee tool. It'll bring up the tool options. The feather is 25. That's fine. I'm going to click up here in the corner. Click, drag, 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 release. Select inverse and the delete key. Beautiful. Let's go back and open the photo bin. Let's go to the next image. These are all single clicks down here. A single click makes the whatever you clicked on the active image. Now look up here. Oh, it locked. It's a background with a lock on it. So one way was to drag the padlock up to the trash can. That's probably the easiest. But also know you could double click on the word background and it'll substitute layer 0, or you could put anything in there you wanted. Okay, I just like layer 0. That's the default, and I'm going to say OK. So now the background is not locked. I go and I get my marquee tool. I come down and I double check the tools. Same feather 25. I come up in the image. That's the initial selection. Again, take note of the rounded edges. That confirms that it is a feathered selection. Come up and say select inverse and the delete key. All right. Now we still have the marching ants. We could do it up here and we could say select deselect. And now the marching ants are gone. Let's go back and wake up the photo bin down here. Now let's click on the white background. This is a plain white background, and you can create any new file by doing File, New. You'd come up here like this, and you'd say blank file. Okay, and it would create something like this. You'll have to go through a dialog box. It'll ask you the pixel dimensions and other questions about the thing you're making, but to save time, I just made a plain white background here. Now, here's where I guess we could call it the magic begins. We're going to place these images with their feathered edges up on the white to be the background to our collage. Okay, so let me come down and click on. I'm going to click and drag. If I click and release, this will make it the active. I want the white one, click and release. I want the white background to be active, but I'm going to click, drag, and then release when I bring the photo up onto the background. Click, drag, 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 release. It puts it right in the middle, okay? Let's get the Move tool. You'll notice it came in as a separate layer. That's nice. It's called Caramel Copy. That's the name of the file. You see all the transparent area around it. That's a reminder. Let's go get the Move tool. And you'll notice because that layer is selected and when I click the Move tool, we now have a bounding box. As we know, the bounding box allows us to click inside and move something around. It also allows us to grab a corner and click and drag, drag, drag to resize. And I can move it around, but I can't do anything else until I either confirm it or cancel it. So I'm going to confirm it. Now the fact that the bounding box is still there is maybe a distraction. You can click anywhere to get rid of that. Okay. Now let's go back to the photo bin. Let's get the second image, but I'm not just clicking on it. I'm click dragging. Click, drag, 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 release. Okay. Now I'm going to make sure the Move tool is active. I see my bounding box. I can move this around. In fact, I can resize it. And now I'm going to approve that. I'm going to fine-tune this collage a little bit later when we get all the pieces up here. Alright, so now we got the background down on the lowest layer, then British Columbia, then Caramel Copy. And it matters where it comes in based on what's selected. So because the background layer is selected, when I bring the next one in, it's likely to be right above the background and below British Columbia. We'll talk about the relevance of this order here in a second. But let's finish getting all three images into the collage, shall we? Let's go down to the photo bin. Let's go get the third image. Click, drag, drag, release. Puts it right in the middle. Sure enough, it came in just above the background. Doesn't really matter where it is at this point. Let's make sure the Move tool is selected. It's got the bounding box, so I should be able to click and drag it into position. Okay, and I should be able to click away somewhere to get rid of the bounding box. And now it just remains for me to do some fine-tuning. Let me make this one kind of smaller. I'm going to come up and click on Caramel Copy, and I'm going to make this a bit smaller. I made it too big, and I'm going to approve it. And then I'm going to come over to click on British Columbia, and the bounding box came up because the Move tool is selected. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller, and I'm going to click and drag it a little bit. Okay. Now, quite often your Photoshop Elements is set up so that if you click on something, it will automatically select its layer. And that feature is down here called AutoSelect Layer. Not everybody likes that, but I do like it because it saves me the chore of going over clicking this and then coming back to move it. Here it says auto-select the layer in parentheses. It should say when you click on it. So watch what happens when I click on this one. 1, 2, 3, click. It's auto-selected the layer. The Move tool is still active up here. That means I can click and move it around. Okay. And that's kind of nice because I can just kind of jump from image to image. Okay. Now there's a lot more to this discussion of layers and such, but the purpose of this tutorial is the issue about feathering the edges. Okay, and with the feathered edge, you can kind of lay them over each other a little bit, and they seem to bleed through a little bit. You just have to experiment with how much feathering you do. You can experiment with those the number values. If I'd select 50 or 75, it would be a much fuzzier selection. Okay, like I could have started really close inside to make a fuzzier selection. You just have to experiment with that. But now the job is really done. We have the background, we have the three images each on its own layer. If you want them overlapped, you could click on this one. And in fact, let's click on this one, this British Columbia one. Now let's put that on top of the Caramel Copy. it's not working. And why is it not working? Well, it's not working because in the layer stack, whatever is highest in the layer stack is what is more prominent, is literally on top of the others. So if I moved British Columbia up above the Carmel, I'm clicking and dragging and letting it go. Now the British Columbia layer is higher than the others, and it will overlap the two things below it. Okay. Now let me click on this image and let's move it over a little bit. We could click on Corsica Cliffs. These are all overlapped. And that pretty much sums it up. So you could make a fancier background, of course. You could put some writing in here. You could crop this to be more to your liking in terms of the finished product. All those things await your input. But hopefully this has been a very helpful discussion about how to do that feathering of the edge on images. Thanks for watching.